All right, everybody. Welcome back once again to Salt the Streets podcast. This is segment 2 today. The powers that be, if you will. Welcome, everybody that's in the chat. Zeke, Bilbo, Io, Wax. If Lexi Kaio's still in there, what's up, baby girl? Salt of the street, the coffin where I sleep, the coffee that I drink. Hey, man. That works for me, especially if you're drinking coffee. You say you never drink coffee, and so you're totally wired. Are you drinking black coffee right now? Because that's the only way I drink it these days. But yeah, welcome back, everybody. This is going to be part 2 of our little solo show we got going on today because we are missing the Nero of Neoprene, the original Salt of the Street himself. Donavan is actually taking a nap right now. He was with us earlier in part 1. He stopped by for a little while, but he is out sick today, down hard with a migraine. And so as a father of 2, I was telling him I'm glad that it sucks that he has to get sick and have a migraine, but I'm glad he's able to actually get some sleep, because as a new father of 2, I'm sure that is in seriously short supply, and he definitely deserves it and definitely needs it. Black coffee with a touch of goat's milk. Oh, dude. Goat's milk in coffee? Interesting. That's interesting, Bilbo. That's interesting. Black coffee with a touch of goat's milk. I don't know. Like, I like goat cheese. I don't think I've ever had goat's milk. I am drinking the ones in the little cups. It's dark, yes. Take it. It's like a little Keurig cup. That is awesome. Jeez, this is so funny. That's great. So today in this segment, we're going to be talking about the powers that be. We're going to be talking specifically about the raid on former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago property, and of course everything that comes with that. We'll get up to speed with essentially where the best we can divine is the latest that we're in, because the reporting on this has been atrocious, and the entire corporate media establishment's colors have been shown, because the misreporting around this is just astronomical. Everything about this thing has been disastrous and has really, really, really undermined the credibility of not just the FBI, but the entire Justice Department as a whole. And I think on that note, it is probably best to let the head of the Justice Department himself, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, speak for himself as we open up today's segment with his statement around the raid on President Trump. So we'll start here.
Good afternoon. Since I became Attorney General, I have made clear that the Department of Justice will speak through its court filings and its work. Just now, the Justice Department has filed a motion in the Southern District of Florida to unseal a search warrant and property receipt relating to a court-approved search that the FBI conducted earlier this week. That search was of premises located in Florida belonging to the former president. The department did not make any public statements on the day of the search. The former president publicly confirmed the search that evening, as is his right. Copies of both the warrant and the FBI property receipt were provided on the day of the search to the former president's counsel, who was on site during the search. The search warrant was authorized by a federal court upon the required finding of probable cause. The property receipt is a document that federal law requires law enforcement agents to leave with the property owner. The department filed the motion to make public the warrant and receipt in light of the former president's public confirmation of the search, the surrounding circumstances, and the substantial public interest in this matter. Faithful adherence to the rule of law is the bedrock principle of the Justice Department and of our democracy. Upholding the rule of law means applying the law evenly, without fear or favor.
Unless it's against.
Under my watch, that is precisely what the Justice Department is doing. All Americans are entitled to the even-handed application of the law, to due process of the law, and to the presumption of innocence.
Oh, this is good.
Much of our work is by necessity conducted out of the public eye. We do that to protect the constitutional rights of all Americans and to protect the integrity of our investigations. Federal law, long-standing department rules, and our ethical obligations prevent me from providing further details as to the basis of the search at this time. There are,
Not for long,
however,
buddy.
certain points I want you to know. First,
Tell me.
I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. Second, the department does not take such a decision lightly.
Really?
Where possible, it is standard practice to seek less intrusive means as an alternative to a search and to narrowly scope any search that is undertaken. Third,
Narrowly.
let
Remember
me
that.
address recent unfounded attacks on the professionalism of the FBI and Justice Department agents and prosecutors. I will not stand by silently when their integrity is unfairly attacked.
Unfairly.
The men and women of the FBI and the
Got
Justice
something for you.
Department are dedicated, patriotic public servants. Every day, they protect the American people from violent crime, terrorism, and other threats to their safety while safeguarding our civil rights. They do so at great personal sacrifice and risk to themselves. I am honored to work alongside them. This is all I can say right now. More information will be made available in the appropriate way and at the appropriate time.
All right. That's enough of you, Merrick Garland. So, before we dive fully into this clown and his statements here, let me show you this. As Takarta, we apply the law evenly without fear or favor. I love this cartoon. It shows, if you're just listening, this is a cartoon of Merrick Garland standing there making his speech, looking all Merrick Garlandy, with, of course, Bill Clinton with a T-shirt that says Epstein Island. We have next to him his wonderful, beautiful wife, Hillary Clinton, in the T-shirt that says Russia hoax, and her hat that says but her emails. Behind that, we got Paul Pelosi holding up a bottle of booze with his car keys, who was obviously being investigated, and I think he was just recently indicted, but for DUI. You got Nancy Pelosi next to him saying, ask me about my stock tips. And then, of course, you got a very strung out crack pipe in his mouth, Hunter Biden holding a pig without a shirt on, with what barely looks like a towel wrapped around his waist, with a piggy bank saying made in China, with a bunch of money coming out of it. And of course, the big guy himself with a little pin on his shoulder saying the big guy, President Joe Biden, right behind him in his nice little aviators, holding his son very, very, very lovingly. So that's where we're going to open up today. This was a big deal. First time in history, a former U.S. president was raided by the FBI. And we say raided because that's exactly what it was. People say search. People say whatever it was. I mean, the media came out right after in the beginning. Their language was that of raid, and then once they got some negative feedback on that, they decided to scale back the rhetoric a little bit because it was a little too on the nose, I think. But essentially, you heard it right there himself. Merrick Garland personally approved the search warrant, which we have and will go over today, for the actual raid on the former president's house over in Mar-a-Lago in Florida, conducted and carried out by the FBI in secret. This was never made public until the president himself made it public via social media. And I think it was on his own personal, his social media app, The Truth. But we'll see about that. After it was made public, immediately there was a good group of folks who went down there, kind of protest on his behalf. Everybody's got their Trump flags and they're doing whatnot. And immediately the corporate press decided to start reporting on the fact that, quote, armed armed protesters were now protesting outside of Mar-a-Lago and making a really, really big deal about this, trying to make a really, really concerted effort to paint these people in a very negative fashion. I mean, I have my own thoughts about, flag waving Trump supporters, but hey, that's for a different aside. But the raid was carried out. What day was it? It was early, not this past week, but the week before. And again, the only reason we found out about the time was because, the president himself, former president, decided to disclose that and make it public at the time. And then next thing you know, every single media outlet was down there as quick as possible. Now, I don't want to go too far into the auspices of what their justification was, because I want to stick with the warrant itself and let that do the speaking for it. Any reporting until the warrant came out was completely nonsensical, and it was backed by, a source close to the investigation, a unnamed source this and unnamed source that, somebody that familiar with the matter or familiar with the investigation. Absolutely disgraceful reporting, and it continued to evolve and change constantly because there was no true facts for these people to report other than the fact that it was happening. They had no real insider information. They couldn't get anything tangible, so they just, as the corporate press does, they just ran with it and just spun their own narrative as they went along. So we're going to start here, particularly because this segment is called The Powers That Be. So right now, one of the major powers that be is the Justice Department. The Department of Justice, as a executive branch institution itself, is at the head of this thing, carried out through their arms via the FBI. Now, as it comes to obtaining a search warrant on a former president, it has to be, an affidavit has to be submitted to a federal judge who then has to approve said warrant. The warrant then apparently needs to be approved all the way up to the Attorney General, because he said he personally signed off on it, which is of no surprise to me. But the judge in this case who signed off on the warrant, particularly as it pertains to the powers that be, is a very interesting man all to himself and has a very interesting story. So I think we're going to start there. Who is this judge that signed off on the search warrant to do a once-in-a-lifetime search raid on a former president's private residence? Now, this is great. The judge who approved the FBI Mar-a-Lago search represented clients linked to Jeffrey Epstein. That is the top line. That is the headline to the story by Politico here. And then it goes through. We'll read a little bit of it. Tallahassee, Florida. The federal magistrate judge who signed off on the warrant that allowed federal agents to search former President Trump's Florida residence once drew scrutiny for switching from his job as a federal prosecutor to working as a defense attorney on behalf of individuals connected to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The judge, known for his meticulous nature, is also well respected within the Palm Beach legal community and had once worked in the Justice Department's public integrity section. He had contributed to both Democrat and Republicans. So we've switched here. The first paragraph saying, okay, so he had once worked as a defense attorney on behalf of the Epstein. And then it goes, he's a meticulous guy. Trump lawyer Christina Bobb told Politico that Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart signed off on the warrant that the agents removed about a dozen boxes of material from the property. Bob was said to be present at the time the FBI conducted the search of Mar-a-Lago and Palm Beach. Reinhart's decision to grant the FBI's warrant request to search Trump's resort has sparked a firestorm. Republicans pounce, who have decried what they call the, quote, weaponization of the Justice Department of Justice. But one local prosecutor described Reinhart, who has been a magistrate judge since 2018. As a well-respected within the Palm Beach legal community, Reinhardt is married to civic court judge Carolyn Bell, a former federal prosecutor who was appointed to the bench by then Governor Rick Scott, a Republican who is now a senator. Quote, he's a former prosecutor and defense attorney, and he's always known for being meticulous, said Palm Beach County State Attorney David Ehrenberg, a Democrat who was elected state attorney, but who also once worked for Republican Attorney General Pam Bondi. He's not going to make a snap judgment. Ehrenberg added, Reinhardt could not be reached for comment. Magistrate judges are not appointed by the president, but instead are appointed by district judges. Their duties can include dealings with bond hearings, handling technical issues in civil cases, and signing off on whether to authorize a search warrant. So we're going to stop there, because the rest of this article basically just essentially goes into detail about how much respect you should have for this guy, how long a career he's had. He's a well-respected person. He's intelligent. He always does the right thing, blah, 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 blah. And then at the very, very, very end of the piece, state records show that over several elections, he donated to $4,000. Wait a minute. Where's my... Maybe I'm thinking of a different article. Oh, they got me on this one. Blacklist website. Here we go. Let's see. He worked as a federal prosecutor until January 1st, 2008, when a day later he became a defense attorney representing employees of Epstein, according to a 2018 story by the Miami Herald. According to the Herald, the employees, including pilots for Epstein, his scheduler, and a woman who had been described by some of Epstein's victims as his sex slave. I don't want to say we're talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, but it kind of sounds like we might be. Epstein committed suicide in Manhattan jail. He did not kill himself in 2019 while awaiting trial for sex trafficking. So, Judge Reinhardt, magistrate judge, not elected by the people, but appointed by a group of other judges in the district, was the one who signed off on the warrant. Now, that I think is really interesting in itself, because even Politico details the background of this judge, and particularly that of a magistrate judge, being involved in things that are, we'll say, infinitesimally smaller when compared to, or in import as compared to signing off and approving a search warrant. First ever in history to raid a former president. A lot of times, what did it say? Involved in circuit court matters. Handling technical issues in civil cases, dealing with bond hearings. But of course, he can also authorize a search warrant for the former president of the United States, which I think is very, very interesting. So that right there already just kind of, the powers that be, man. The powers that be. This federal judge that signed off. I'm not going to tie any of these things together, obviously, but we're not trying to. You know, this segment isn't solely about the FBI's raid on Mar-a-Lago. It's more of a path to, really the real subject matter here, which is these people that are in power. And these people that are in power are people that were prosecuting attorney, and then all of a sudden one day just decided to flip and become a defense attorney for the Epstein people. And now he's a judge that signs off on a warrant, which when you read the warrant sounds insane, of a former president of the United States. This guy signed off on this thing. He gave the legal go-ahead to the FBI to do this. So now let's go ahead and open up the warrant that was unsealed. Now this is great. So there's a bunch of legal stuff right at the beginning, blah, blah, blah. Search and seizure warrant. This is Southern District of Florida. You are commanded to carry out this warrant on or before August 19th. Attachment A. The premises to be searched, and then it gives the address, is further describes so they kind of describe the overall area to be searched. The location to be searched include the quote 45 office, all storage rooms, and all other rooms or areas within the premises used or available to use by POTUS. I don't even know how we're going to probably put that. Former President of the United States and his staff, in which boxes or documents could be stored, including all structures or buildings on the estate. It does not include areas currently at the time of the search being occupied, rented by third parties, so on and so forth. It's a resort. They're not going to go break down, everybody else's place that lives there. Now, the real interesting part, this is what it is that they're actually looking for. Bilbo Swaggins, the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. This is the first time I have seen a warrant. I'm excited for this. Boom. Heck yeah, buddy. We got a warrant for you. And this interesting. It's just a couple pages of paper. So, attachment B. Property to be seized. All physical documents and records constituting evidence, contraband, fruits of crime, or other items illegally possessed in violations of U.S. Code 18793, 2000, blah, 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 all those codes, which we're not going to get into, including the following. A, any physical documents with classification markings, along with any container/boxes, including any other containers in which such documents are located, as well as any other containers, boxes that are collectively stored or found together with the aforementioned documents and containers/boxes. So anything that has a classification marker. B, information, including communications in any form regarding the retrieval, storage, or transmission of national defense information or classified material. C, any government and or presidential records created between January 20th, 2017 and January 20th, 2021, also known as the entirety of his presidency. If we recall Merrick Garland talking about limited and narrow in scope, how about just the entirety of his presidency? That works. My ass, limited and narrowed. D, any evidence of the knowing alteration, destruction, or concealment of any government and or presidential records or any documents with classification markings. And then we have the receipt, the property receipt, as they say. This is what they took out, and should be noted, it's redacted. If you could see, there's a few boxes here, case numbers, who it's received by, and printed name, of course. But this is great. They have 33 items in total on the receipt, and they are, we'll name a couple of them for those of you that can't see or just listening. One of the documents, box labeled A14, box labeled A26, box labeled A whatever. Executive grant of clemency, R.E. Roger Jason Stone Jr., Info R.E. President of France, leather-bound box of documents, various classified TS SCI documents, potential presidential record, binders of photos, 2 of those, handwritten note, box labeled so-and-so, miscellaneous secret documents, miscellaneous top secret documents, more miscellaneous top secret documents, miscellaneous confidential documents, box labeled so-and-so, miscellaneous secret documents, confidential documents. So boxes and boxes and boxes of documents. That's what we got here. We got boxes of documents, some binders of photos, a handwritten note, of course, the grant of clemency for Roger Stone, and info regarding President of France. That one, that's intriguing. I want to know what that is. But yeah, that's what we got going on here. That's what they found, along with the warrant. I mean, in total, you're talking 7 pages between warrant and receipt. So the powers that be have decided to approve an Epstein defending judge, backed by Merrick Garland, approved a search warrant for anything that had a classified marking for the entire of Trump's presidency in the search warrant. that sounds pretty narrow in scope to me. That sounds pretty great to me. The long and short of it is that's basically the best we've gotten at this point. There's really no way to know what's in those documents, what's in those boxes. What is really going to be giving us some more info on this is the possible unsealing of the affidavit, which is the document that is brought to the judge to ask him to approve the search warrant. It's the reasoning behind the search warrant. And that I have good news on, because normally those are not unsealed. But thanks to the Twitter world, we have, somebody's been following up on this case here. United States District Court, Southern District of Florida, case number so-and-so under Reinhardt, the sealed search warrant. This has to do, let's just read the thing here. This cause is before the court on motion to unseal the search warrant materials, including the probable cause affidavit. That's the important part that we need. That were filed by the Meteor Interventors, so on and so forth. Today, I held a hearing on the motions. As I ruled from the bench at the conclusion of the hearing, I find that the present record, the government has not say that again. I find that on the present record, the government has not met its burden of showing that the entire affidavit should remain sealed. It is ordered that by noon Eastern Standard Time on Thursday, August 25th, so that is next week, ladies and gentlemen, next week, August 25th, the government shall file under seal its proposed redactions along with a legal memorandum setting forth the justification for the proposed redactions. That means that sometime next week we're going to have some more. We're actually going to have a little bit of info on this, and ideally we will have ourselves a little bit of info on the reasoning behind why it is that the FBI decided they needed to justify a raid on the president's private residence. There's been a lot of speculation about what it is that he has and why he's holding on to these different things and so on and so forth. And it will be a cherry-picked information. I seriously doubt at this point in time, Bilbo, that it'll be something that will, there won't be a smoking gun, as it were, as to indicting the FBI and the Justice Department for weaponization. But hopefully it'll be something. If there's, I don't know, Florida seems like a pretty decent place as far as the legal system goes. I don't know. It's also the same place that signed off on the warrant to begin with, so it's going to be a crapshoot. But at this point, any information that we can get out of this is going to be better than just allowing the corporate press to continue to run with it. The White House came out after this was happening and said they had no knowledge that this was going to happen. They had no idea. They heard about it on social media reports, and just like the rest of us did. They're just folks like us, man. You got to tell me that the President of the United States is not going to get a what's up from his AG that they're about to raid the former president, his predecessor, and most likely political contender in the upcoming election? You're going to tell me you're not going to tell the president about that? Because that seems pretty sus to me. That seems like if I was the president at that point, I'd be firing people because I'd be like, how are you not going to keep me informed? You work for me, dude. You work for the executive branch. I am the executive. How are you not going to give me a heads up that you're about to drop this on me like this? Unless, of course, he knew. But then again, he is also 1,000 years old and can barely string a sentence together. I would doubt that they would want to tell him anyways because he would have no idea. Hopefully Ronnie D is able to do something. Ronnie D. Yeah, hopefully. We'll see. We'll see. That's the best we could do right now. Just kind of wait for something to happen. I don't know how much because it's in the federal court system, I don't think Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, has much he could do necessarily. Maybe he can help put pressure on the FBI or something like that. Maybe he can put pressure on the FBI's field office there. I'm not sure. Unfortunately, the feds kind of have a reputation of just steamrolling over the states. It would be really nice if he did something as ballsy as just, expel the FBI out of a state. I'd imagine he could try to do that. That would be fun. I'd love to watch that try to go down. One downside I've realized of doing a solo show is very little time to drink beer. I brought 2 Oktoberfests with me today to get through the show, and I'm like not even down half a can right now. So yeah, that's where we're at, man. We're at the FBI. Director Christopher Wray, who was appointed by Trump, I should add. That's been a big thing the court press has tried to make a deal out of. I mean, anybody that's up in arms about this shouldn't be upset because this is a Trump-appointed FBI director. This is Christopher Wray we're talking about here. This is Trump's guy. Man, we'll get into some more further fuckery of the FBI here in a minute, but I just gotta say, man, if you weren't skeptical of, I don't want to call it the deep state because that term is so overused and so charged with other stuff, but if you're not skeptical of the power of the administrative state at this point, I don't know what's wrong with you, because you got to understand, like, people like Director of FBI Christopher Wray, he has some kind of power. I mean, he's got a lot of power, but at the end of the day, it's the FBI field offices. It's not the everyday agents, more or less. Maybe the middle management of the FBI, whose names you don't know, the ones that make the machine move, that push through search warrants. That conduct these raids, the people that conceptualize this stuff. I mean, that's insane to me. It's been nice, I will say, to see the kind of, though it might be hollow in a lot of fashions, but the general outpouring of disdain towards the FBI from the Republicans in office. A lot of messages of defund the FBI were floating around, which was, as an anarchist, I'm fully on board of. And anybody that believes in any kind of minarchist system, minimal, small government, anybody should be on board with that. Any way to limit the Fed's ability to get to you is a good thing. That's where we're at. I mean, I don't understand why anybody would not want that, unless, of course, you're somebody that fully believes that regardless of the means, the ends is justified. If you like what a powerhouse like the FBI does, then you want them around, because they have the unconstitutional ability to basically steamroll over even a former president's civil rights for like their actual natural rights. They could just go right over them. Why? Because of the FBI. They have the power to do it. And anybody that thinks that that's a good idea, I question your morals at that point. This is not a good thing to do. If there was a serious problem with this, we know for a fact that since the spring, the Trump world, if you will, has been involved with the National Archives in trying to get back X amount of records and so on and so forth. They've been in legal battles. They've been in talks. Everything's been going. They've showed up. They've grabbed stuff. There was a story during the raid that the FBI broke open his safe and, broke the lock off a safe or something like that. And it was reported that the National Archive folks provided him the lock so that he could securely store whatever records these were. There's been a lot of argument and discussion about the process, legal and otherwise, of declassification when it comes to the executive, because there's only one person in the government that can set classification standards, and that is the president. And there is no legal or constitutional avenue to pursue the validity of classification or otherwise. There are people that essentially make the argument that as the lead executive, the president can just say, hey, this is unclassified, and it is thereby declassified. Some people argue that there are processes in place that, yeah, the president could do that, but then he needs to cycle that down. He needs to filter it down to the rest of the bureaucratic state that needs to do that, so that they can essentially put another stamp over top of the classified stamp that says, okay, this is declassified now. Then it's officially declassified, but there's no legal precedent for it. There's no constitutional precedent for it. I mean, there's nothing. So this is going to become a problem as this continues to go forward. Considering the FBI had a warrant to arrest any presidential information under his entire presidency that had any form of classification associated with it, this tells me something else. This tells me the FBI is trying to do something else. This is not exactly part of the... Yeah, we could tie it to it. Let's do that. The FBI... It appears at this point that the FBI is trying to find something that is illegal. It is very unclear at this point whether or not just by possession of classified documents, if the president has done anything illegal in that respect. There are ties to what they call the Espionage Act, which is a very broad law that can basically hem up anybody that the government wants to hem up for almost any reason whatsoever, and has been used in a lot of very ill-begotten cases to get certain problematic pieces of the chessboard off. Bilbo Spaggins says, back in the 1980s, a law was passed that a president can unclass any document up until his last day. Word. And then the problem is, like I said before, is how does that process go down? I don't think there needs to be a process. If the president himself can classify whatever he wants, he could declassify whatever he wants. He can get in there, declassify all the fucking Area 51 stuff. He could declassify all the alien stuff. He could declassify the 2X25 JFK stuff. There's no reason that they can't declassify that. There's zero reason why a sitting president cannot do that. That is his sole authority to do that. Period. I don't understand what we're talking about here. Unless, of course, you take the more logical path here that the FBI is trying to come after a private citizen. This is the full weight and power of the federal government's executive, law enforcement, and justice branch coming after a private citizen. For what? Over classified documents? Like what? Like what? You justify this to me in any way, please, right now. The only problem with it is there is no time frame for release. Yeah, that's true. And who knows? Who knows how that... There's been no... It's never been an issue until now. You know what I mean? There's... I think what you're talking about, the only problem is there's no time frame for release. You talk about like the release of classified information, like a declassification release. Because on certain ones there are. Like with there's no definitive time. But like with the JFK stuff, those are all classified 2X25, which means that it is 2 times 25 years. So that means 50 years declassified. But the problem is when it comes up when that time comes up, they can just say, nah, that's still 2X25. It's still classified. We don't need to release it. We could, but we're not going to. And when it comes, like I said, to the executive, he's the executive, the person in the job at the time, the executive of the country, of the government, has all the power to do this. These are all his agencies, their agencies, his, hers, whatever. This doesn't make any sense to me unless you look at it from a prosecutorial standpoint. I mean, they are coming after them for a reason. I don't know what the reason is yet, other than it's getting close to midterms. Once midterms are done, he's going to announce. And it would be a hell of a lot worse if we did this once he was an official candidate. I mean, I don't get it. There was a report done that apparently Merrick Garland sat on the information. He thought about whether or not he should sign on to the warrant for weeks. He was going over it in his head, making sure it was the right thing to do. The October surprise is going to be wild this year. Yes, Bilbo. That's what I am. I feel like there was a guest on Timcast IRL, maybe last week or something like that. Her name Naomi Wolf, and she had made this point essentially that things are crazy now. They are literally the craziest they've ever been at this point. This is a once in a nation's history thing at this point, and things are just going to continue to get crazier as November comes. And if this is where the bar's at in August, October is going to be rough. October is going to be real rough. I'm not looking forward to what is going to happen in October. And also, I mean, it would also be very interesting if anything, it's more for just informal how this giant machine works, to understand or establish some regularity around what it is a president could take with them when they leave. At one point, he was given the highest security clearance possible because he was the president. You can't not deprive the head executive of a security clearance if he's the one that authorizes ultimate security clearances. So it would make sense at that point that he obviously has the highest level of security clearance. He has the access to anything the government has in their possession, period. Why would you not be allowed to take certain things with you on the way out? Because you're going to maintain that clearance. You're always still going to have security with you, because that also follows you out the door. The proper methods of storage and safekeeping and so on and so forth. And as far as the government's security is concerned, wouldn't it be better to have a much more decentralized security network at that point? If all of your documents are in one spot, what happens if, a plane flies into the fucking White House, destroys the archives? Who knows? Would it be best to not have that in a decentralized manner all around? I mean, who's got tighter security than former presidents? I don't know, man. So let's dive into another bit of fuckery on the FBI's in the FBI's realm. And for this, we're going to look to our good friends over at Project Veritas. The FBI whistleblower leaks domestic terrorism symbols guide on, quote, militia violent extremists. This was great when it got rolled around the internet. And unfortunately, we got to talk to whoever's leaking these documents because they're very, very hard to read. It's a very blurry type of picture. And if you're just listening, I'm going to describe this. And what this is a FBI internal use only, unclassified, law enforcement sensitive document passed around to people at the FBI entitled Militia Violent Extremism. And they give a summary of what it is that they say that is, and I can't quite read it, but it's a list of symbols and references that are associated with militia violent extremism. Some of the symbols include two-way, boogaloo, which, if you don't know what the boogaloo is, let's talk. But obviously, we'll talk on Signal. How about that? Electronical resistance symbol, which apparently is some kind of, like an electric current resistance thing. This one was really got me. Anarcho-capitalism. The symbol for ANCAPs is on an internal FBI militia violent extremism flyer. Does that mean that ANCAPs are violent extremists? How about the warrior culture? It's pictures of like a Spartan helmet. I can't read the other one. Oh, that's the cannon. What is the story with that? It's Timcast talks about it a lot. And then of course Black Flag, which is also just the standard anarchist symbol is a black flag. So not only are ANCAPs and anarchists, and what is that cannon flag? There's such a great story about it. I'll have to remember it another day, talk about another episode. But all those symbols now are considered symbols of militia violent extremism. You have commonly referenced historical imagery or quotes. The Gadsden flag, which I proudly have in the studio, which I don't think you could see at this point because there's a lot in the studio. The Gadsden flag, the Liberty Tree, Revolutionary War imagery, and of course the Betsy Ross flag. All those are commonly referenced historical imagery associated with militia violent extremism, according to the FBI. I don't think I even need to. What is so wrong with that? What's wrong with that is they represent the standing up against tyranny, the overthrow of an oppressive regime. I don't know how you could be more crystal clear here, man. If the FBI itself is telling you that these are symbols and references to militia violence extremism, that means one thing and one thing only. The FBI does not want you to have these. They consider you a violent extremist at that point. Common phrases and references, they have a list on here. I can't read them. See, even if I blow them up, they're too blurry. They're too blurry for me to read. Symbols of militia networks. Some MVEs, militia violent extremism, may self-identify with 3%ers. I can't read that one. Light something militia. The Oath Keepers, who are heavily involved with Jan 6. American Contingency. Mainstream militia nationwide. Mostly online activity. Low history of violence, they say. Actually, I highly encourage everybody to go watch. I don't remember what day it was. Must have been Wednesday or Thursday of last week. Episode of Timcast IRL has the founder of American Contingency on, and he describes exactly what it is. He's a former special ops guy. Did a lot of time in Afghanistan, Iraq, and a bunch of those things, and now kind of runs this loose association of various American militias and holds trainings on self-reliance and survival and homesteading, and very, very into individual freedoms. And he was a part of the group of guys run by Tim Kennedy that went back to Afghanistan as a private organization to help pull people out that Joe Biden left to die when he abandoned Afghanistan. I have lots and lots of feelings on that, but the guy he's a dude that does stuff, man. He's there, and he's a really nice, intelligent guy. He's it was really funny. They talked about how he's mixed race, and so now this is basically the FBI being racist against his organization. That it's really important to discuss here too the concept of a militia. It is painted by the powers that be as nothing more than generally white supremacist-backed violent groups who look to overthrow the government, and they want to do terrorism and domestic terrorism and all this stuff, which is the furthest thing from the truth is when it comes to what a militia is. A militia is an associated group of like-minded citizens who believe in individual liberty and freedom. And they believe that Mike Glover, thank you, Bilbo Swaggins, Mike Glover, I was blanking on the name, but who want to get together and essentially form what is essentially a club, which under the First Amendment and the freedom of association is our absolute right to do, and the government cannot infringe on that. Joseph, you made it! Late as usual. Hey, that's all right, buddy. We're doing something a little different here today anyways. Our good buddy, brother-in-arms, Donavan, is out sick today, so I'm flying solo. And we're talking about militia violent extremists right now, which is great, courtesy of Project Veritas. But yeah, a militia is nothing more than a group of people that decide as a community they want to get together and be able to train so that they can defend their communities and their neighbors from external threats. That's it. The militia was the only reason we have a country. That and the French, but we won't talk about them. Militias are necessary for the security of a state. It's in the Second Amendment, for God's sakes. The painting of militias as terrorists is the most disgusting authoritarian grab at power that I've seen in a very long time. And almost every other day, there's a new grab at power, which disgusts me. And this one is fundamentally disturbing because it eats away at the ability for the individual American to withstand the tyranny of the government, which the Constitution is literally designed to prevent. This is something too. I'll just talk about this for a second. Michael Malice has talked a lot about this when it comes to whether or not people are white-pilled or black-pilled about the future of the country and society as a whole, and whether basically white-pill being you're hopeful and black-pill being like, no, this is it, bro. This is bad. Society's going to crumble. It's all going to be over. He likes to say that he's white-pilled because none of these people that are in power are very impressive. They're all very, very unimpressive, right? But my pushback to this concept is, and why I'm black-pilled about this entire thing is, yes, individually, these people are very unimpressive. They are. But what is so impressive about them, because they've all been in office for decades, essentially. They've all been in the same circles for decades. What is most impressive about these people is that they've been able to build up this machine that is now capable, 100% capable of, if they wanted to, flipping into full tyranny mode and knocking in people's doors at any point in time. They do it on a very, very, very regular basis. They as individuals are not impressive, but the machine that they have built that guards them from the populace is insanely impressive to me. It is terrifying to behold, and if you come up against it, it is terrifying to try to withstand. It's not good. This is all really, really, really bad. The weaponization of the Department of Justice it did not happen when they raided Mar-a-Lago. It happened a long time ago when it was created. The FBI, when the FBI was created, that was a step too far. It gave the federal government law enforcement powers, which they are not dictated or mandated to have. They don't deserve to have any of it whatsoever. The states have legal authority within their own borders. Unless the FBI comes, well, if it's a federal crime, now the FBI gets to take care of it. Bullshit. The FBI, the federal government doesn't deserve, they're not remitted to have any of the power that they have now. Bilbo says, that is their ultimate goal, but they need to have the hive mind behind them. That's right. And the hive mind is the machine, man. Every one of these people that gets into power is absorbed into the machine. Every one of them, damn near. You could count on probably one hand how many people have been able to withstand the machine in at least some capacity. But a lot of people go in there with high hopes, and the next thing you know, they are absorbed. So it's not good. And now, how about this story as far as the powers that be here? Alex Berenson. Alex Berenson is somebody I don't remember if we talked about in the last episode or not, but he was banned on Twitter for spreading COVID misinformation and all that good stuff. Well, he has since gotten his account back, and on his Substack, he described what happened and why he got suspended from Twitter, and we'll just let him speak for himself here. His piece on his Substack, which I highly recommend everybody get up on Substack. They're amazing people that talk about amazing stuff there. So the White House privately demanded Twitter ban me months before the company did so. Biden administration officials asked Twitter to ban me because of my tweets questioning the COVID vaccines. Even as company employees believed I had followed Twitter's rules, internal Twitter communications reveal. In a White House meeting in April 2021, 4 months before Twitter suspended my account, the company faced, quote, one really tough question about why Alex Berenson hasn't been kicked off of the platform, a Twitter employee wrote. The employee recounted the meeting discussing afterwards on Twitter's internal Slack messaging system. The message and others make clear that top federal officials targeting me specifically, potentially violating my basic First Amendment right to free speech. Fact check, true. The First Amendment does not apply to private companies like Twitter, but if the companies are acting on behalf of the federal government, they can become state actors that must follow free speech and debate, just as the government does. Previous efforts to file state action lawsuits against the government and social media companies for working together to ban users have failed. Courts have universally held that people who have been banned have not shown the specific demands for government officials that are necessary to support state action claims. Oh, but he's got the receipts this time, man. Here, if you're just listening, I'm going to show a couple screenshots that he got from going through discovery when he was suing Twitter over this. And it shows the private Slack channel, and there are redacted names of who it is. But here we go. Quote, how was White House? Crossing fingers emoji. Overall, pretty good. They had one really tough question about why Alex Berenson hasn't been kicked off from the platform. Otherwise, their questions were pointed but fair, and mercifully, we had answers. JW, any high-level takeaways from the meeting? Anything we should keep an eye out for? Thanks for clarifying, and yes, they really wanted to know about Alex Berenson. Andy Slavitt suggested they had seen data viz is like a visualization of data. It's like metadata and stuff like that, that had showed he was the epicenter of disinfo that radiated outwards to the persuadable public. So here we go. We have an aide to the President of the United States talking to Twitter about why they hadn't banned a private citizen off their platform. The powers that be are coming after individuals for exercising their freedom of speech because it questions their narrative. I mean, this was all around COVID. And as we know now, the COVID guidance has always been bullshit. The CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, has recently come out and admitted fault for essentially the CDC being a giant clusterfuck during the entire pandemic, and vows that they're going to be better and so on and so forth. And really, they're just going to empower all these. They're going to have more power to do worse things. The CDC was the same organization. They decided, without any kind of legal precedent, they could just say, you can't evict people. We're going to put in an eviction moratorium now. That's the Centers for Disease Control, ladies and gentlemen. The powers that be do not want you to have any control. They need all the power. All the power must be divulged to them, and they have to dictate how it is that you get to live your life the way they want you to. Them banning and getting rid of these voices only being more ears to listen. And that's, man, all I'm going to say is it is a good thing that we're in the era we're in. Because yes, this stuff, we would not know this. We would not be able to have this discussion 20 years ago. Not even 20 years ago. Not even 10 years ago. The only reason we could do this because the technology exists at this point to see certain things. I think Donald Trump becoming president did have a lot to do with that. Not the technology part, but he helped, I think, break the brain of the hive mind for a little while. It saw him as a virus, an outsider, and it had to act to expel him, and continues to do that. And through that process, the public as a whole has been able to glean these things and see these things. There's a whole, I got a whole thing in here about Director Christopher Wray downplaying the evidence in Hunter Biden's laptop. There's a whole, I mean, you can pretty much anywhere you look these days find more and more examples of the government's ties to powerful private corporations. Homeowners still had to pay their mortgages. BlackRock was ready for that. Ready if they didn't. Amen. Amen, Joseph. That is absolutely right. The only people that didn't get to do that were like, and it really kind of fucked a lot of people up that certain states already had really powerful tenant-sided eviction laws. Washington State is very, very tenant-friendly. I mean, you could damn near live in somebody's rental property for over a year before they can legally kick you out. Like, it is wild. And that's without any of the COVID bullshit. But yeah, you best bet that if you are a homeowner and you didn't pay your mortgage, gone, goodbye, doesn't matter. Anything to remove any power from you, any generational wealth from you, gone. Gone. But if you're just a cog in the machine, either they don't care about you and you can just fall by the cracks, or we'll come down on the guy that's making money off of you. Man, oh man. I've been thinking a lot about fascism lately. I gotta tell you. What is fascism, right? What's fascism? The lefts have been calling us fascists for years. Fascism is an authoritarian form of government that is generally run by a dictator, but is not necessary. If you Google it, it'll say it's a right-wing. It's an ultra-white right-wing government, but it has nothing to do with right-wing or not, depending on your definition of that. But it's an authoritarian government that has control over corporations, and generally speaking, also the means of production goes along with that too. But generally speaking, it has to be like Vichy style, like actually state-owned corporations. You know, the corporate, the state would need to actually own portions of the corporation, kind of like like Nazi Germany and fascist Italy and stuff like that. But particularly when it comes to like this Alex Berenson piece, once the government holds sway over these companies, when all they have to do is ask them to do something for them, whether or not there'll be legal ramifications or not, they always have the threat of legislation and regulation behind them. Anytime the government sways a corporate entity like that, in my mind. Like you said, that Alex Berenson is going to sue the White House for this misdeed. Because the White House, or because Twitter, via their involvement with the executive branch through the White House like that, became a state actor. When they're a state actor, are they any different than a fascistly controlled entity? No, not in my mind. So paint that any way you want, but maybe Antifa, it was onto something when they say America's a fascist country, because hot damn, I'm starting to believe it. Not in the way they think, but it's real hard not to see it anymore. It's real hard not to see it that way. When, every single social media outlet over the last, number of years been involved in discussions in front of Congress and hearings and threatened with regulation, blah, 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 unless they kind of do what they want to do. Maxine Waters will say it outright. If you guys if you guys don't do what we want to do, we'll do it for you. That's fascism. How is that not fascist? And when you got everybody from the Department of Justice all the way down to the peons at the FBI calling you an extremist for being a part of a militia, getting private citizens kicked off of social media. Like that's, and how do I know that they actually believe this? Because you got people like this. I'm going to prompt this real quick. This is a clip from a show I highly recommend called Trigonometry, done by a couple of British blokes, and they were on an American tour and spoke with a bunch of American intellectuals, and they had a really good conversation with former member of the IDW, Sam Harris. And this is a 2-minute clip, so hang on for a minute, but it's going to be well worth it. But he, I think, perfectly embodies this problem we're talking about on an individual level.
I mean, Hunter Biden, at that point, Hunter Biden literally could have had the corpses of children in his basement. I would not have cared, right? It's like, there's nothing. First of all, it's Hunter Biden, right? It's not Joe Biden, but even if Joe Biden, whatever scope of Joe Biden's corruption is, like if we could just go down that rabbit hole endlessly and understand that he's getting kickbacks from Hunter Biden's deals in Ukraine or wherever else, right? Or China. It is infinitesimal compared to the corruption we know Trump is involved in. It's like a firefly to the sun, right? I mean, like it doesn't even stack up against Trump University, right? Trump University as a story is worse than anything that could be in Hunter Biden's laptop, in my view, right? Now that doesn't answer the people who say it's still completely unfair to not have looked at the laptop in a timely way and to have shut down the New York Post's Twitter account. Like that's just a conspiracy. That's a left-wing conspiracy to deny the presidency to Donald Trump. Absolutely, it was absolutely right, but I think it was warranted. Right, and again, it's a coin toss as to whether or not
Sam, I'm sorry.
That particular piece.
I'm really sorry. I was the one that said we should move on, but you've just said something I really struggle with there, which is
the kids in the basement.
Fuck the kids in the basement. I'm interested in democracy. You're saying you are content with a left-wing conspiracy to prevent somebody being democratically re-elected as president.
Well, no, I'm content. Well, but the thing is, it's just not left-wing, right? So Liz Cheney is not left-wing, right? Liz Cheney is doing everything in her power
to prevent somebody being democratically elected.
But there's nothing conspiracy. It's not. It was a conspiracy out in the open. But it doesn't matter if it was. It doesn't matter what part's conspiracy, what part's out in the open. I mean, I think it's like if people get together and talk about what should we do about this phenomenon. If it's like if there was an asteroid hurtling toward Earth. And we got in a room together with all of our friends and had a conversation about what we could do to deflect its course, right? Is that a conspiracy? Like some of...
Oh, okay. It's Sam. He goes off on this tangent at the end about trying to justify conspiracy and how conspiracy itself isn't illegal, but that's not the point here. The point is that these people that believe enough in the powers that be fulfilling what it is that they want for themselves, they're so okay with that, they're willing to just completely back a government-wide conspiracy to fortify an election, we'll say, in the words of Time magazine. I mean, they're okay with subverting the ideal they tout most of all. Bilbo says, this show how much you can easily be indoctrinated. Yes, man. And I used to really, really, really appreciate Sam Harris I disagreed with him on most things. But this right here, he's lost all credibility to me at all. Joseph Garrett says, we see what Hitler did with the IBM catalog system. Imagine what the new version of fascism will do with the current tech. Amen, dude. I mean, they're already doing it, for God. In reality, they do it all the time. You know, if they want to get access to your phone records, all they got to do is ask the phone company, and then boom, there you go. There's that. There's a story going on in Seattle right now. The former mayor of Seattle is being investigated by the city prosecutor for deleted text messages during the chest chop time, and they're saying that they were unable to recover these text messages. They were deleted, so on and so forth, which is against city law, city code, or whatever it is. And all they have to do, essentially, if they have the same power as the federal government, all they would have to do is ask whatever the carrier was to get the data, and they'd have it. I don't know if the city has that much power and pull, but I would say maybe it's a good thing they don't. But you know for a fact that the feds wanted it. All they got to do is ask. And there was that big case with Apple about their encryption problem and how they couldn't get records from cell phone of a terrorist that shot a bunch of people down in California, because Apple said, we can't give you that info because we've made it so that we can't. That's the way that's supposed to go. This is private information. In the age of everybody skimming data off of everybody, all the government's got to do is ask for it, and they got it. I mean, I would highly doubt the NSA itself doesn't already have it or have access to it, but if that ain't fascism, man, I don't know what is. Yeah, I don't like it, man. None of this is good. None of it's good. It's all bad. We're all doomed. Oh, I wish I had like another fun palate cleanser to end this episode on, because I think, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to call it here. Been going for about 2.5 hours. Not too bad for my first solo op. Hopefully we don't have to do this too much more, but I'm not going to lie, I didn't hate it. Bilbo, Garrett, Zeke, everybody, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for hanging out. Watch for this to hit all podcast platforms next week. If you're into that sort of deal, Garrett, you can catch up on the first part of the episode right here on the YouTube at Salt of the Streets. Make sure that you follow us and all the great things that we share on our social medias. I am at Big Bird Offie on all the jams. My co-host, brother at arms, so on and so forth. Donavan, he is at alpaca_Donavan on Instagram, and at Salt of the Street, singular, on Twitter. Yeah, we'll see you there. Everything could be found Salt of the Street style on, just search out on any platform, Salt of the Streets. That's where we're all at. And yeah, Patreon. I have a love-hate relationship with Patreon, obviously, but right now we got to do what we can. If you guys really want to support us, if you believe in what we're doing, please subscribe to our Patreon. We got a monthly newsletter and all sorts of goodies over there. And with that, it's been real, everybody. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next time.
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready.